so pleased to see 1, 2, 3, 4. Milana was the one that sent in $5 last night to say, here's for my blues brothers and stuff. But,
it's all very much appreciated.
Joy online was the first to get her $5 in. So thank you, Joy. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Joy.
My friend David goes by the name of Paco, or Paco. He's a real blues man, originally from Wisconsin. Moved to Florida when he was 30 years old to help his sister on a farm. Came to Gainesville. Has been playing guitar since he was about 13 years old. Been in bands since he was about 20. And he has played in all types of genres. He's been with Little Mike and the Tornadoes for about 5 years, though he's known Mike for about 20 years. And they're playing tonight at One Love Cafe. You want to all come? See my wife, the accountant. She'll buy you a hummus plate. We can't.
I have already committed attendance.
Oh, already committed attendance. Okay, well, do you mind if I go?
Oh, you can go.
Okay, good. I expect to see you all there. We'll share a hummus plate. I can't buy you beer, but on the other hand, he loves the freedom of expression and the room that blues gives you for all sorts of interpretations. And a little bit later on, we'll talk about his influences. What I'd like to do is turn it over to Paco. He's going to play a full song, then explain some of the other genres, and then a full song later on. And if you have a question in between, please raise your hand. Or for those of you online, unmute yourself and raise your hand. Go from there. Please give a big hand to Blues Brother Paco.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed.
Don't you want to go now, bitch? I've been over out of mind. I just can't be satisfied, and I just can't keep from crying. Well, I'm going back down to Memphis, get my camp on ball. Little camp on spoil says I've been shown. Oh, I've been a word of mine. I just can't be satisfied, and I just can't keep from crying. It takes rocks and gravel to build this solid road. It takes more than half my skin to satisfy my soul. Now I've been troubled. Oh, I've been told a word of mine. Oh, I just can't be satisfied, and I just can't keep from crying. When I see my baby, she gonna jump and shout. When that steam train rolling late night comes strolling out, now this road I'll be all word of mine. I just can't be satisfied, and I just can't keep from crying. child said, don't you wanna go on that trip? I'll be all worth mine. Just can't be satisfied, and I just can't keep from crying. Just can't be satisfied, and I just can't keep from crying. Just can't be satisfied, and I just can't keep from crying.
I think what he's getting at is the fact that he can change time signatures several times. In a pop song, you don't do that. With these, we've got about 3 or 4 different little changes in the time signatures, and that's really quite cool.
That's very astute of you, and it actually that was deliberate on my part. Like I put that in that particular solo so that it would come up in conversation. That's another thing that Robert Johnson is one of the primary guys that if you want to look at that aspect of blues and just the randomly dealing time signatures like playing cards throughout a song. On the Delta side, Robert Johnson is one of the first guys to look at. On the Piedmont side of things, you look at a guy like Blind Blake, Arthur Blake. And even in the obscurity of this genre, Blake was an obscure guy.
Right.
And in my opinion, the best right hand ever. Because that's what it takes to do that. I mean, the alternations in the right hand are the, you know, if you're just using a guitar to spell out the entire arrangement, there isn't any other instrument going on. The alternations on the right hand are what indicate all those shifts in time signature. And I can't even begin to do the stuff Blake would do. It's just mind-bending.
Yeah. Who are some of your early influences from the blues?
At the very earliest, there were 2 blues records in my parents' record collection, and they didn't spin them, but they were in there. And by the time I was, I don't know, 8 or 10, out of idle curiosity, I got around to spinning those. You know, so there definitely was kind of a latent interest as a result of that. One of those was a John Lee Hooker record, which had Boogie Chillin' on it. And you know what I'm talking about, the rap in the middle of that. If any of you are unfamiliar, he gets into this bit where he's telling a story about being a child laying in bed, overhearing his mom and dad talking. And he says, I heard Mama tell Papa that you got to let that boy boogie woogie because it's in it and it's got to come out. And yeah, somehow I got the point of that. It resonated with me. So there was that Hooker record, and there was a live B.B. King record. You know, so that's not a bad basis to have in the background. Now, this instrument was what drew me to playing guitar, and in the context of bluegrass. My dad was a traditional country and bluegrass guy, and when I was 13 years old, I mean, I'd heard all this stuff before, but for some reason I noticed the sound of the dobro in the mix on a bluegrass record. Okay, so I started working with that, and in my mid-teens, started listening to rock and roll, and you know, it wasn't until I got serious about playing guitar that I
really got into the blues. You know, once you start working with an instrument and understanding the relationship and the dynamic there, and the difference between playing something scripted or playing something where you can just play the melodies that you're hearing in your head and it's all within the rules. You know, that's when I gravitated to the blues, and that once I got into that state of mind, all those players started seeming a whole lot more proficient than they did before to me.
Yeah. I was telling them a couple of weeks ago that almost all of us that grabbed an electric guitar, we all played Smokestack Lightning, Tobacco Road,
Yep.
and eventually morphed into Smoke on the Water and stuff. Did you play, you know, pop or straight rock to begin with, or did you just move right into blues?
Well, because my first interest was in dobro and in the form of square neck dobro. You know, so I started out playing with a bar like this, and the very first tune I ever learned was Steel Guitar Rag. But you know, a lot of the lap steel sounds from the early country records. But I only stuck with that for about 9 months, and picked up a guitar and learned the chords and so on. And once I started with that, again, I started out playing old country because that's what Dad played, and that's who I had to play with.
Great. You promised to demonstrate a couple of styles.
Yes.
And
actually, while I've still got this thing, weird. Oh yeah.
typical musician, you know, we've got so many pockets, we don't know where our
Yeah. Getting back to that transition, that piece that I opened with is the first song that Muddy Waters ever wrote. Wrote it when he was 9 years old. But Muddy is kind of the link between it all. He actually is firsthand connected to those earliest guys that started putting melodies to field rags. And he was still around in it, you know, like when Chess Records and Bluebird Records kind of created the sound of electric blues in the 50s and 60s. He was on the cutting edge of all that, and he was still around playing with postmodern blues bands in the 70s and 80s. But, you know, he knew the earliest, he knew the same guys that had influenced Robert Johnson and other people like Son House and Charlie Patton and folks like that. So it's, you know, those guys were even more simplistic. But I mean, really, Son House is one of my favorite players. You know, there's something that's just really straight to the point about that. You know, guys that almost never change chord, they just stay in the one chord for the whole group, and it's all about the groove. You know, John Lee Hooker used to say, just throw away the chords, it's all about that beat. You learn how to work that beat, and you got it all going on. You know, and Son House was like big brother to Robert Johnson and Muddy and these guys, and he, you know, he was, you know, taking that call and answer, just taking the simplicity of the call and answer in an open tuning and trying to get as dynamic as possible with it. That's another thing that's really an earmark of the blues. Is it's one thing that is kind of an unspoken rule about it is it has to be dynamic in the maximum. It's a lot more dynamic than other genres of music. You know, the dynamic should have really deep valleys and really extreme peaks, and the transitions between the two should be manipulated in every manner of way. You know, like all those sorts of things are what define the differences between this tune and that tune. You know, Son House even as simple as it is, it's like he's embodying a lot of the things that kind of make how you make a guitar work in bands today. Things like, like arpeggiating through the, through the chord, just little manipulations of the string, and maximizing the space between the meter.
Don't get me religion. Gonna join the Baptist church. Get me religion, gonna join the Baptist church. Gonna be me a Baptist preacher, so I wanna have a word. He'll go on for 10 minutes with something like that. Never leave the one chord. Do a little variation in meter here or there, but it's, up until those early blues guys came along, people on guitars were strumming chords. They weren't really doing anything to like physically get in touch with the instrument and kind of needle and cajole it and see what all you can dynamically, what all you can get out of a guitar. So Cat's doing things like this, laid the groundwork for that. You're talking about Hooker a minute ago. There's somebody that came along sometime later. But the same kind of principle is just, that you can create a lot of variation just by working the dynamic of the meter and by sculpting the tone and sculpting the texture of the piece as it goes along, to the point where the audience doesn't even really seem to notice that you haven't changed chords through the whole song.
I played them at John Lee Hooker's performance of the Blues Brothers movie and pointed out it's only one chord, E7. And actually I brought my guitar in and I started playing along with it because I can certainly play one chord.
Yeah. Hooker made a whole career out of that.
What other styles can you show us? Texas blues or obviously Chicago blues?
Yeah. Just so that there's, an alternative to that very delta sound that we were getting with that alone, like Gary Davis did, the Cincinnati Flow Rag.
Okay, good. Reverend Gary Davis was one of the earlier blues guitarists to really utilize the fret fully. And the funny part is that that was only maybe 3 chords: G, G7, C, C7.
Yeah.
But look how they fill it in with all sorts of little techniques there.
Yep. That's the whole idea.
Yeah. And again, people that think that blues is so involved, well, it's not flamenco guitar, you know, but by filling it in with little fills like that, occasionally a little A to A7, you know, makes a great sound.
Yeah. You mentioned Texas blues a minute ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that a lot of what marks that, and of course I reference everything from the perspective of how does the guitar fit into it, because that's what I do. But in terms of Texas blues guitar in general, it's that's really angled toward getting the the more brash and aggressive edge of what you can get out of the instrument. And even more so with electric guitar, if you take it into the a little bit more postmodern, and guys in bands playing electric guitars particularly, there's a lot more of the affectation, there where a Chicago style player playing a boogie woogie might work. Where a Texas guy might be more inclined to not mute those notes quite so much. Something as subtle as that, or a lot of it is the attack on the beat. And again, Texas bands tend to be a little more aggressive with the dynamic of where they hit the even something like that, where you're getting as much physicality out of that note as you can, but more importantly, you're hitting it on the back side of the beat.
We covered Freddie King and Man's Lipscomb, father of Texas blues. And, they, like you say, they're really sharp and real blues shouters and stuff. So it's really in your face
Yep.
as opposed to the more elegant Chicago blues.
Yeah.
If you can describe it as elegant.
Absolutely. You know, even stuff like that. I mean, Texas guitar players tend to attack the notes more than massage the notes. You know, like a Chicago guy might be more apt to. Work. A lot of people, when they, you know, of course, as far as, you know, folks who only have a passing interest in the blues, maybe only have, you know, a little bit of mainstream media here and there, when they think of Texas blues, they immediately think of the Vaughns. And really, Jimmy and his bandmates in the Fabulous Thunderbirds are very deeply immersed in this genre, in the origins of the genre. I mean, Stevie, as magnificent a player as he was more broad in his scope than that. A lot more broad in his scope than that. Where his older brother Jimmy was very much into the origins of the blues and you know, working all the things, just what we were talking about, the thing that the early blues guitar players gave us was all the ways to work the instrument and get things out of the instrument, and that's what Jimmy was about. He played without a pick, played with, you know, strings as big around as you know, just high action, heavy strings, just working the guitar. And Kim Wilson, the frontman in the Thunderbirds, is the same way. A lot of their best songs were, you know, like a smorgasbord of really great blues classics.
Right.
You know, things that earlier guys had written that they had been influenced by.
Do y'all recognize the name Stevie Ray Vaughan? Is that, are we too old for you now? But yeah, look up Stevie Ray Vaughan. He's just magnificent, taking, you know, basic of blues and bringing it into really high energy rock and roll. First time I heard Scuttlebutton, I'm like, yeah, this is great. I was hooked on it. But his other things like Little Wing and some of his originals, just great. But you're right, Jimmy's a little bit more classical blues than that. You know. One song I really liked, on Sunday I went out to the Depot, which is out Highway 441 by Micanopy, and just a really great place. You played a song called, I think it was called Used Car Blues or something like that. Would you play it for us?
I certainly will.
Lyrically, it's, you know, we talked about this hokum blues, or, you know, these suggestive things without being in your face and using the analogies and stuff. But I love that song, and I'd love for them to hear it.
This is a good one to wrap up with, too. I mean, with the whole chat we had about the differences between Delta and Piedmont styles, and this is one of the pieces where I deliberately try and utilize some aspects of either one, take off in different directions throughout. I'm just an old used car, baby. I got a few too many miles.
an old used car wreck. Got me a few too many minds. But I got a ride that's built for comfort. Oh, yes, at a price to make you smile. My magneto needs adjustment, but I can help you turn the key. My magneto needs adjustment, but I can show you how to turn the key. Come on over here. Let me show you. My body's a little rough around the edges. Oh, but just you slide down in the seat. Come on, slide down the seat, baby. See how you like the ride. I'm just an old rusty rambler. Best you hear me when I say, just an old rusty rambler. Baby, you know I ain't no terraplane. For that fast ride with the shiny paint job, leave you standing in the rain.
That's me, old rusty rambler. Yeah, good. I hate to say it, we're kind of running out of time. We do have time for one or two questions. What would you like to ask?
This is just a question from someone who doesn't know a lot about like instruments and music, but I noticed on, is that a resonator?
Indeed it is.
I noticed the coverage over the hole, and I was just wondering kind of like what the purpose of that is. It's probably a stupid question from a musician's perspective, but
No, it's really not at all. It, for one thing, it gives the trapeze tailpiece something to rest on. Primarily, it's about protecting things. The cone itself underneath there that's producing the sound is very thin. It's foil thin, and the whole apparatus is somewhat delicate, so you don't want anything bumping into it.
wow.
And you don't really want it accumulating dust either, but mostly you don't want physical attrition, and that also this cover goes over the bridge, so that's primarily the purpose for it. I'm guessing that probably the tension of the strings would be enough to hold this tailpiece where it needs to be. I don't think it really has to rest on there, so it's kind of an interesting question. Now that I think about it, I suspect that it would be just as viable to play without this cover, and it would probably be a little louder. Undoubtedly, it would be a little louder. It would change the sound some too. Kind of makes me think of the old trick of pulling the felt pads off the piano to get that clangy, honky-tonk sound in there.
Yeah. Last week, Doug explained to us the difference between a regular guitar and a resonator. He said the resonator, the cones go outward, and a dobro, they go inward or something like
yes.
that.
Well, just to clarify the nomenclature, all guitars that employ a cone of any sort are resonators. Resonator is like the descriptive term for the overall general style manufacture, this idea of setting the bridge on top of a cone and having that work. But what you were referring to is the two primary brands of these were National and Dobro. And so it's kind of like a skill saw. It's like everybody calls a circular saw a skill saw, because the first primary one, that was a skill brand, and it just kind of becomes a catch term. So people tend to use dobro as a catch term for resonators, but it's a resonator type guitar. Now this is a National, and just as Ed was saying, the Nationals have the cone faced upward, like the bridge is sitting on the peak of the cone, where and they refer to, there's what's called a biscuit that the bridge is sitting on. Looks like a little hockey puck. And so this is referred to as a biscuit style, whether it's National or any other brand. If the cone is up and the bridge is sitting on the cone on that little biscuit, that's a biscuit style. The Dobro and other similar manufacturers had the cone the other way. And so they're referred to as a spider type because there was a thin cast metal frame underneath there for the bridge to sit on. It kind of looked like spider legs. So those are the two. The spider type has the cone facing you rather than with its back to you.
Okay. Look at this. Tips. Very good.
Much obliged.
Okay.
And
we've run out of our online. Jack, thank you very much for your $5. I'll post this video on YouTube later on tonight. If you have questions, for some reason I couldn't figure out how to get to the chat room. If you have questions, submit them and I'll send them to Paco, and we'll get back to you and all. But we've pretty much run out. One of the best things that we do here is we pay the musicians. And we don't make them you know, chase around for that. That's why I like playing at High Springs Brewery. They've got the money right there, and they say, yes, please come over here, and I don't have to deal with that. So look what we raised today. Let's see, I got 420. Look at this. We raised $105 for you.
That is
There you
absolutely
go.
amazing.
Please give them-
I appreciate you all so very much. It's been great being here today. And how about a big hand for Professor Rag here?
Well, what I want to do is, once everybody's offline here, I'm going to get us, does everybody have like sunglasses so we can appear like we're bluesy or something like that? You know, cool blues people. Okay, next week is our final one. I'm trying to get High Springs Brewery, get a date there so you all can come on up and support me. I could use your tips as well. No, just kidding.
I'll take the picture from here.
Okay, well, I'm going to take it with the big one. Okay, thank you all, and we will see you here next week. Let me log these guys out.
Thank you so much.
Oh, very good. Good.